Since the start of the recent wave of near-daily attacks by Palestinians on Israelis, Jerusalem officials have placed the blame on the spread of incitement on the Palestinian street. The assailants, most of whom are young and acting alone, were said to be acting out of hate inspired by the press, schools, the mosque, social media, and the PA, the Palestinian Authority itself. Now, Dr. Mansdorf, you've been researching incitement as a whole, the topic of incitement, in particular its effects on the so-called lone wolf assailants. It is simply a matter of a youth reading an article by someone like Al-Kik and then going out and, I mean, is that how it works? He would read Al-Kik's words, then grab a knife and go outside?
Well, it's certainly not as simple as that. And I could say that with, especially with lone wolf terrorism, what we don't know is much more than what we do know. And with Al-Kik, there's a number of factors involved as far as Al-Kik is concerned. Al-Kik has turned into a case that's not only about administrative detention. In fact, it's probably less about administrative detention and more in terms of what he's turned into as a symbol in Palestinian society. The Al-Kik story is on the front page of Palestinian press every day, and it's something that people follow, and it's part of the aura and culture of anti-Israel feeling that's in Palestinian society today. But I wouldn't say that somebody reads an Al-Kik article, goes out and picks up a knife and goes out there. The choice that someone makes to go out and commit a terrorist attack is far more complicated than just simply reading an article and going out.
Clearly, such as what? I mean, give me an example.
Well, I mean, if you take a look and you see that more people don't do it than people that do it, and there are certain sections of society that are exposed to the same incitement, yet they don't do anything, there's psychological factors that are involved. And if we take a look at the previous studies that we look at, take a look in the years between 1981 and 2008, there were close to 3,000 suicide bombings that occurred then. Now, this is not a suicide bombing, and this is not a suicide attack in the same fashion as those were. But out of those 3,000, there was only a handful of people that actually went out and did it by themselves. They were all organized, and there were many factors. The great mystery of lone wolf terrorism is that there is no organizer, and the thing that frustrates the Israeli authorities and the defense authorities and the security authorities and people in the street is that you don't know who's going to be the next person to take out a knife. And in fact, it frustrates Palestinians themselves. If you speak to Palestinian families, parents of teenagers, they don't know if their children are going to be the ones who are going to get up the next morning and go out there.
Isn't that the loophole or the vacuum where people like Al-Kik fall into then, because he can be blamed by a variety of things? So Mansdorf, you are beginning to research yourself into this, aren't you?
Right. I think it's important. Well, one of the things is if you want to know if incitement has any effect on society and on these kids, one of the things you do is you ask them. And up until this point, there hasn't been that much research into Palestinian youth itself in terms of what are the factors that lead them to think, to lead. You know, if you take a look at, if you compare this to a medical illness, you take a look at something like diabetes, and we know that diabetes is when sugar rises, the levels of sugar raises to a critical level in the blood. What are those factors in terms of violence, where violence is the diabetes of the society? What are the factors that we're looking at that have to get to a certain level before someone goes out and actually commits an act of violence? And
in terms of violence, although we're kind of skirting around the issue, and I'm asking Chagai Matar, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there are people that will argue on certain sides of the political spectrum that maybe it's not incitement, or that the reason for certain acts would be the occupation. Is that too harsh to say?
I think that makes sense. I mean, you have to listen to what people themselves are saying. I mean, if you listen to a lot of what's been going on Palestinian media, to Al-Kik's own claims, I mean, he's clearly talking against the occupation. I mean, there's no question about that. Although he does it on Saudi television. I mean, he's not working locally, we should mention. But clearly, we are talking about the occupation as a cause for these attacks and for the writing and for administrative detention. I mean, this is the context of everything that we're talking about, clearly.
And research as such as yours, which I think is welcome and wonderful, but is that something that you think can help strategize as how to prevent?
Well, I would take it one step. I think saying that the occupation is the cause of it, we know that there's an occupation, and we know that there's violence, but the correlation does not necessarily mean that there's a causation involved. And I think we have to be a little bit more sophisticated and nuanced in understanding what are the exact factors within that situation that you call an occupation and that Palestinians refer to as an occupation that actually lead someone one morning to get out there and do something. And clearly there's a lot more people that don't than do. And there's opposition within the society to it as well. So I think it's too knee-jerk, with all the understanding of human rights activists in terms of the troubles and the problems that people suffer. I think it's too knee-jerk and not an answer just to say the occupation caused it. I think we have to be a little bit more detailed in terms.